Wahhabism, or Wahhabi mission, is a religious movement, a branch of Sunni Islam. It has been variously described as ultraconservative, austere, fundamentalist, puritanical, or puritan, and as an Islamic reform movement to restore pure monotheistic worship by scholars and advocates, and as an extremist pseudo-Sunni movement by opponents. Adherents often object to the term Wahhabi or Wahhabism as derogatory, and prefer to be called Salafi or muwahhid. The movement emphasizes the principle of tawhid. Its principal influences include Ahmad ibn Hanbal and Ibn Taymiyyah. Wahhabism is named after an 18th-century preacher and scholar, Muhammad ibn Abdul-Wahhab. He started a revivalist movement in the remote, sparsely populated region of Najd, advocating a purging of practices such as the popular cult of saints, and shrine and tomb visitation, widespread among Muslims, but which he considered idolatry, impurities and innovations in Islam. Eventually he formed a pact with a local leader, Muhammad bin Saud, offering political obedience and promising that protection and propagation of the Wahhabi movement mean power and glory and rule over lands and men. The alliance between followers of Ibn Abdul-Wahhab and Muhammad bin Saud's successors proved to be a durable one. The House of Saud continued to maintain its politico-religious alliance with the Wahhabi sect through the waxing and waning of its own political fortunes over the next 150 years, through to its eventual proclamation of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia in 1932, and then afterwards, on into modern times. Today Ibn Abdul-Wahhab's teachings of the official, state-sponsored form of Sunni Islam in Saudi Arabia, with the help of funding from Saudi petroleum exports. The movement underwent explosive growth beginning in the 1970s and now has worldwide influence. The boundaries of Wahhabism have been called difficult to pinpoint, but in contemporary usage, the terms Wahhabi and Salafi are often used interchangeably, and they're considered to be movements with different roots that have merged since the 1960s. But Wahhabism has also been called a particular orientation within Salafism, or an ultra-conservative Saudi brand of Salafism. Estimates of the number of adherents to Wahhabism vary, with one source giving a figure of fewer than 5 million Wahhabis in the Persian Gulf region. Many Sunni and Shia Muslims disagree with the Wahhabi movement, and a widely circulated conspiracy theory holds it to have been a product of British Secret Service efforts for causing the demise of the Ottoman Empire. Ulama, including Al-Azhar scholars, regularly denounce Wahhabism in terms such as satanic faith. Wahhabism has been accused of being a source of global terrorism, inspiring the ideology of the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant, and for causing disunity in Muslim communities by labeling Muslims who disagreed with the Wahhabi definition of monotheism as apostates and justifying the killing. It has also been criticized for the destruction of historic mazars, mausoleums, and other Muslim and non-Muslim buildings and artifacts. Definitions and etymology. Definitions. Some definitions or uses of the term Wahhabi Islam include a corpus of doctrines, and a set of attitudes and behavior, derived from the teachings of a particularly severe religious reformist who lived in Central Arabia in the mid-18th century. Pure Islam, that does not deviate from Sharia law in any way and should be called Islam and not Wahhabism. A misguided creed that fosters intolerance, promotes simplistic theology, and restricts Islam's capacity for adaptation to diverse and shifting circumstances. A conservative reform movement, a creed upon which the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia was founded, and has influenced Islamic movements worldwide. a sect dominant in Saudi Arabia and Qatar, with footholds in India, Africa, and elsewhere, with a steadfastly fundamentalist interpretation of Islam in the tradition of Ibn Hanbal, an 18th-century reformist revivalist movement for socio-moral reconstruction of society, founded by Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab, originally a literal revivification of Islamic principles that ignored the spiritual side of Islam, that rose on the wings of enthusiasm-D longing and then sank down into the lowlands of Pharisaic self-righteousness after gaining power and losing its longing and humility, a political trend within Islam that has been adopted for power-sharing purposes, but cannot be called a sect because it has no special practices nor special rites, and no special interpretation of religion that differ from the main body of Sunni Islam. The true Salafist movement, starting out as a theological reform movement, it had the goal of calling people to restore the real meaning of tawhid and to disregard and deconstruct traditional disciplines and practices that evolved in Islamic history such as theology and jurisprudence and the traditions of visiting tombs and shrines of venerated individuals. A term used by opponents of Salafism in hopes of besmirching that movement by suggesting foreign influence and conjuring up images of Saudi Arabia. The term is most frequently used in countries where Salafis are a small minority of the Muslim community but have made recent inroads in converting the local population to Salafism, a blanket term used inaccurately to refer to any Islamic movement that has an apparent tendency toward misogyny, militantism, extremism, or strict and literal interpretation of the Quran and Hadith. Etymology. According to Saudi writer Abdulaziz Qasim and others, it was the Ottomans who first labeled Abdul Wahhab's school of Islam in Saudi Arabia as Wahhabism. The British also adopted it and expanded its use in the Middle East. Wahhabis do not like, or at least did not like, the term. Ibn Abdul Wahhab was averse to the elevation of scholars and other individuals, including using a person's name to label an Islamic school. Naming controversy. Wahhabis, muwahhidun, and Salafis. According to Robert Lacey, the Wahhabis have always disliked the name customarily given to them, and preferred to be called muwahhidun. Another preferred term was simply Muslims, since the creed is pure Islam. However, critics complained these terms imply non-Wahhabis are not in monotheists or Muslims, and the English translation of that term causes confusion with the Christian denomination. Other terms Wahhabis have been said to use and or prefer include Ahl al-Hadith, Salafi Dawa or al-Dawa ila al-Tawhid or Ahl al-Sunnah wal Jama'ah, Ahl al-Sunnah or the Reformer Salafi movement of the Sheikh. Early Salafis referred to themselves simply as Muslims, believing the neighboring Ottoman Caliphate was al-Dawla al-Kufriya and its self-professed Muslim inhabitants actually non-Muslim. The prominent 20th-century Muslim scholar Nasiruddin Albani, who considered himself of the Salaf, referred to Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab's activities as Najdi Dawa. Many, such as writer Quentin Wiktorovich, urge use of the term Salafi, maintaining that one would be hard-pressed to find individuals who refer to themselves as Wahhabis or organizations that use Wahhabi in their title, or refer to their ideology in this manner. A New York Times journalist writes that Saudis abhor the term Wahhabism, feeling it sets them apart and contradicts the notion that Islam is a monolithic faith. Saudi King Salman bin Abdulaziz Al Saud, for example, has attacked the term as a doctrine that doesn't exist here and challenged uses of the term to locate any deviance of the form of Islam practiced in Saudi Arabia from the teachings of the Quran and prophetic hadiths. Ingrid Mattson argues that Wahhabism is not a sect, It is a social movement that began 200 years ago to rid Islam of rigid cultural practices that had acquired over the centuries. Another source criticized the use of the word for its confusion, as it has different meanings to different groups. In South Asia, Deobandis call the Ahl Hadith Wahhabis, while Barelvis called Deobandis Wahhabis. On the other hand, according to authors at Global Security and Library of Congress, the term is now commonplace and used even by Wahhabi scholars in the Najd, a region often called the heartland of Wahhabism. Journalist Karen House calls Salafi a more politically correct term for Wahhabi. In any case, according to Lacey, none of the other terms have caught on, and so, like the Christian Quakers, Wahhabis have remained known by the name first assigned to them by the detractors, Wahhabis and Salafis. Many scholars and critics distinguish between Wahhabi and Salafi. According to American scholar Christopher M. Blanchard, Wahhabism refers to a conservative Islamic creed centered in and emanating from Saudi Arabia, while Salafia is a more general puritanical Islamic movement that has developed independently at various times and in various places in the Islamic world. However, many call Wahhabism a more strict Saudi form of Salafi. Wahhabism is the Saudi version of Salafism, according to Mark Dury, who states Saudi leaders are active and diligent, using the considerable financial resources in funding and promoting Salafism all around the world. Ahmad Musalli tends to agree Wahhabism is a subset of Salafism, saying, as a rule, all Wahhabis are Salafists, but not all Salafists are Wahhabis. Hamid Algar lists 3 elements Wahhabism and Salafism had in common. Above all, disdain for all developments subsequent to al-Salaf al-Salih, the rejection of Sufism, and the abandonment of consistent adherence to one of the 4 or 5 Sunni madhabs. And 2 important and interrelated features that distinguished Salafis from the Wahhabis: a reliance on attempts at persuasion rather than coercion in order to rally other Muslims to the cause, and an informed awareness of the political and socio-economic crisis confronting the Muslim world. Hamid Algar and another critic, Khaled Abu el-Fadl, argue Saudi oil export funding co-opted the symbolism and language of Salafism during the 1960s and 70s, making them practically indistinguishable by the 1970s, and now the 2 ideologies have melded. Abu el-Fadl believes Wahhabism rebranded itself as Salafism, knowing it could not spread in the modern Muslim world as Wahhabism.